So they came back to the tents of the Achaeans. Everybody remember where they were? No.
Yes.
Where were they?
They were on the field and opposing each other, and they decided to take a break and go for the night. And there they did.
So they came back to the tents of the Achaeans. And Agamemnon, well, he was going to sacrifice a cow and a 5-year-old sheep. And they skinned the animals. And they laid them out and they cut them up into little pieces. And then they put them on spits. And they roasted them. And then they took them all off again. And when they'd done all this work, well, and they made a feast. And they feasted. They feasted until everybody had their fair share of the meal. And you know, Agamemnon, powerful Agamemnon, the Lord of men, he cut out the tenderloins to give to Telamonian Ajax as the prize of honor. Because he kicked ass last week. That's right. And then when everyone had put away, maybe extinguished is better, their desire for eating and for drinking, well then Nestor, the old man who had always given good advice before this, now he stood up and he wove his plans and addressed them all. Son of Atreus, and you who are the best of the Panachaean force. Now today many Achaeans with their flowing hair have died. Now their black blood flows in to the streams of the Scamander, and sharp Ares, he has scattered all of our people. Their souls have gone down to Hades. So now we Achaeans, we must, at dawn, we must take a break from this war and get our mules and get our oxen and gather round and circle up the corpses, collect them, and then we must burn them right in front of our ships. And then each man should be responsible to take each man's bones back to give to his children when we make it back to our own beloved fatherland. And on the single burial, well, we will heap up more earth so that it blends in with the plain. And on top of that burial mound, we will build high ramparts, a defense for us and for our ships. And in those ramparts, we must make gates that fit very well together. And then there's got to be a road for horses. And then outside of all of this, we are going to dig a deep trench, something that will hold off the people and their horses. Otherwise, I think these arrogant Trojans might crush us. That's what he said. And all of the Achaean kings, they approved of what he said. Now, at the same time, in Troy, up on the Acropolis, they were also having an assembly. This one, though, had a bit of terrible tension to it. They were gathered right outside of Priam's doors, and it was Antenor, an inspired man. He was the first to speak out. Hear me, Trojans, Dardanian allies. I'm going to tell you what my heart tells me to say. We have to give Argive Helen back. Argive Helen and all her things, we have to give them back to the sons of Atreus to lead away again. Now we fight as liars. We have broken our oaths. I can no longer have any hope that this can turn out well for us unless we do this. That's what he said. And he sat down. And next it was Paris, also known as Alexander, brilliant Alexander, who's the husband of Helen with the good hair. He stood up and answered, and his words flew. Antenor, I don't think I like what you say anymore. I mean, can't you think of anything better to say than this? Is this really what you want to say, really? Because if it is, I think the gods have already made you brain dead. Now I'm going to say what I want to say to all the horse-breaking Trojans. I flat out refuse. I won't give the woman back. But all that stuff that I took from Argos, I could give that back. And I can throw in some of my stuff from my house, too. That's what he said. And he sat down. And now Dardanian Priam, a man whose advice was as good as the gods, he stood up with every good intention, and he addressed all of them. Hear me now, Trojans. All you Dardanian allies, I am going to tell you what my heart tells me to say. We should have dinner. Just as we did before. And then all night we must keep watch and we must stay alert. And then at dawn, let Idaeus, the herald, go down to the hollow ships of the Achaeans and give the message to the two sons of Atreus, to Agamemnon and Menelaus, the message of Alexander. Alexander, who is the cause of our conflict. But on top of this, let him add a more reasonable request, that we might take a break from the terrible sounds of war so that we can burn the bodies of our dead. We will fight again later, until the god decides which one the victory will go to. That's what he said. And everyone heard him, and they listened. And so everyone went and had dinner, all through the army, just as he ordered. And then at dawn, Idaeus, the herald, he went down to the hollow ships, and he found the Danaans, the sidekicks of Ares. They were also having an assembly. So many assemblies. They were gathered right beneath the prow of Agamemnon's ship, and Idaeus, the loud-voiced herald, he went right in the middle of all of them. And he said, "Son of Atreus, and all of you best men of the Pan-Achaean force." So Priam and the Dardanian, the noble Trojans, they have ordered me to come here and give you a message. Whether or not you like it or it is sweet to you, it's Alexander's message. You know, Alexander, he is the cause of all this conflict. Okay, so all the things that he brought to Troy, and I really wish that he had died before he did that, he will give all of those back, and he will add stuff from his own house on top of it. But the woman, the wedded wife of very famous Menelaus, he will not give back, even though the Trojans definitely ordered him to. But on top of this, I have a more reasonable request, that we might take a break from the terrible sounds of war so that we can burn the bodies of our dead. Because we will fight again later until the god decides between us which one gets the victory. That's what he said. And all of the Achaeans were stricken to silence. except for Diomedes. Diomedes of the great war cry, he got up and said, "We're not taking Alexander's stuff. We're not even taking Helen. Any fool now can see how the edges of death are fixed all around the Trojans." That's what he said, and all the Achaeans let out a great shout. They approved of what horse-breaking Diomedes said. And now Agamemnon, the Lord of Men, he said to the herald Idaeus, "Idaeus, I think you can hear for yourself what all the Achaeans want to answer this Alexander with, huh? But look, I like the idea of burning the bodies. I don't mind that at all. You know, we can't be stingy with our dead. They deserve the comfort of cremation. So let Zeus, who thunders and is the husband of Hera, be my witness." That's what he said, and he raised his scepter up to all the gods in heaven. And Idaeus, meanwhile, he went all the way back to Troy, and he found the Trojans and the Dardanian allies. They were still gathered there in their assembly. They were waiting for Idaeus to come back with his message. And he went right in the middle of them, and he told them all what had happened, and right away they got ready. They got ready. Some men got ready to collect corpses, and others got ready to gather the firewood. And on the Achaean side, too, by the ships, they got ready. Some men got ready to gather the corpses, and others got ready to gather the firewood. And then, when Helios came out of the deep, still ocean and went up into the sky so that it cast new light down on the earth, that's when these two armies came face to face. It was hard to recognize the dead. So each man would take water and wash the blood away from their mortal faces. And then, as they poured tears, they would load the corpses up into four-wheeled carts. But they did it in silence. Priam had ordered them not to cry out, grieving as they were, as they piled up the bodies, up on the pyre, one after another. And then they lit the pyre, and they went back to holy Ilion. And then on the other side, too, the Achaeans, grieving in their hearts, they too piled up the corpses, one after another. And then they lit the pyre, and they went back to the hollow ships. Now, it still wasn't dawn. It was that time that was kind of a twilight right before daybreak. And this is when a whole crowd of the Achaeans came around the funeral pyre, and they began to push earth up on it, making a huge burial mound. And on top of this, they built the high ramparts, a protection for themselves and for their ships. And then they put the gates in there, the gates that fit really well together. And through there, the road for the horses. And then they built a deep, deep trench that they dug out of the earth. And then they put stakes all around. That's how the Achaeans worked. And all the gods, well, they were sitting next to Zeus, who flashes lightning, watching these bronze-clad Achaeans work. But it was Poseidon, the earth shaker. First appearance. He was the first to talk. Father Zeus, what is this? Now just any mortal man can just do whatever he wants without letting the gods know first? Or maybe you didn't see that these Achaeans with their flowing hair have just built a massive mound over this tomb with high ramparts on it. And now this wall, its fame is going to spread like the dawn. And then men will forget all about the wall that I built with Phoebus Apollo when we worked really hard to help Laomedon build his city. That's what he said. And cloud-gathering Zeus was annoyed. Oh, Popoi, earth shaker, wide strength. Really? Any other god would be terrified to say their thought aloud to me. Any other god that had less strength in their hands or in their battle fury. But come on. I mean, you can just break the wall of the Achaeans whenever they go back to their own beloved country. You can push the whole wall into the sea. You can make a beach out of it with a lot of sand. You can just completely break the Argive wall. So while these two were talking like this, the sun set, and everyone ate dinner because the Achaeans had finished their work. And now ships came. Ships from Lemnos, full of wine. It was Jason's kid, Euneus, who sent them. Euneus, who Hypsipyle had bore to Jason, who was the shepherd of the people. Okay, and they were full of wine because they promised 100 measures of wine as a gift to the sons of Atreus, Agamemnon and Menelaus. But all of the other Achaeans, they had to pay for their wine, right? Some paid for it with bronze, others with flashing iron, some with cow hides, others with the cows themselves. Some paid for it with slaves. And then they feasted. And all night long the Achaeans feasted beside their tents. And all night long the Trojans, they feasted up in the city. But all night long, Zeus. Zeus was planning bad things. Throwing lightning and thunder. So that pale fear took a hold of everybody, and anyone would pour a little bit out of wine to Zeus before they took a sip for themselves. And then everyone went to bed. And then sweet slumber took them. And then dawn came. Dawn spread all over the earth with her yellow dress. And that's when Zeus decided to call all the gods to an assembly up on the highest peak of Mount Olympus with its many necks. And so he addressed them, and all the gods listened. Gods, goddesses, hear me now. I'm going to say what my heart tells me to say. Now I don't want any of you to disagree with me. I want you all to agree so that I can get done what I want to get done. That means I don't want any one of you, no god, no goddess, going down there to help. Not the Achaeans, not the Trojans, and anyone I do catch going down there to help. I will strike them down, all the way down to Tartarus, gloomy Tartarus, the deepest recesses of the earth. It has an iron gate and a bronze threshold, and Tartarus is further down from Hades than earth is from the sky. And then you'll know how much stronger I am than you. You want to try it? Anyone? What if I had a golden rope? If I had a golden rope and I hung it all the way from heaven down to the earth, and all of you went on that side and tried to pull on that rope and pull high Zeus down, you couldn't do it. No matter how hard all of you worked. Nope. But me, I would just pull up that golden rope with all of you and all of the earth and all of the sea too, and then I would tie it up to the highest peak of Mount Olympus and just let the whole lot of you hang forever in midair. That's how strong I am. Stronger than the gods, stronger than men. Whew, that's what he said. And everyone was stricken to silence. I mean, they respected what he said, but he had spoken pretty strongly. And then it was bright-eyed Athena, the goddess. She was the first to respond. Zeus, Father, lordliest, mightiest, we already know how much stronger you are than us, and how, we can't stand up against your strength. But we pity the Danaan spearmen when they die, when they fulfill their evil fates this way. So come, at least let us go down as counselors to be some benefit to the Achaeans. We will hold back out of fighting as you ordered, but just something so that they don't all die because of your rage. That's what she said. And cloud-gathering Zeus just smiled and said, "Buck up. Buck up, my dear daughter. I mean, what I said before, that's not really how I feel in my heart. I just want to be gentle towards you." That's what he said. And then he got his chariot together. So the chariot, first the horses. Okay? They have flying feet that are bronze, and they have golden manes. And then Zeus, he puts on his gold clothes. I don't know what he was wearing before that, right? And then he gets up into the chariot and he takes the reins, very well made, of gold. And he whips the horses and they fly eagerly. They fly all the way between the starry sky and between the earth. And he comes to Mount Ida with all of its springs. Mount Ida, who is the mother of wild beasts. And he comes to Gargaron, where there's a sacred district to him, and he has a sacrificial altar, all the good stuff. And there he brings his horses to a standstill, and he unhitches them from their harness, and then he just puts a thick mist all around the horses. And then he sits up on Mount Ida himself, very proud of his own strength, watching the Achaeans down by their ships and the Trojans in their city. And meanwhile, the Achaeans, by their ships, by their tents. They had breakfast. But they ate pretty quickly, because then they put on their armor. And the Trojans put on their armor too. Even though there were many, many fewer of them, they were eager to fight because they had to, for their wives and for their children. And now the great crowd of the Trojans come running out of the city, and the infantry and the cavalry, all through the open gates of Troy, and it's a horrible noise that comes from it. And now the armies, they come face to face. And the spears are hitting spears, and the battle fury goes against battle fury, and oxhide against oxhide, and the bosses of shields against the bosses of shields. It's a terrible noise. The screams and the victory shouts of the killers and the killed, and the ground runs with blood. Alex? What? What? Oh my God, yes it is. Sorry, everyone. And as long as the sun kept going higher up in the sky, that's when the spears and the arrows were hitting their marks and men fell. But when the sun hit its peak, the zenith, that's when Zeus pulled out his golden scales. And he took the spirits of death, the bronze-clad Achaeans' death spirit on one side, the horse-breaking Trojans' death spirit on the other, and then he stretched out the scales to see what would happen. And it was the death day for the Achaeans. The Achaeans' death spirit sank so that it went all the way down to the earth that feeds many men. And the Trojans' death day went up into the air. And now Zeus slashed down lightning and thunder down on the Achaean side, and the Achaeans were stunned, and pale fear took hold of them. Now not one of them could stand fast, not Idomeneus, not Agamemnon, not the two Ajaxes, those sidekicks of Ares with their rage. Only Nestor, the guardian of the Achaeans, the old man, he held fast. But he didn't want to. Paris, Alexander, who is the husband of Helen with the good hair, he had hit one of Nestor's horses right where you want to hit a horse if you're going to hit a horse with an arrow. Hit him in the head, at the top part where the hair comes out of the skull. And so the horse reared up, and the arrow sank down into its brain. And the other horses, they were driven into confusion. And the old man, Nestor, he takes out his sharp sword and he's hacking at the harness. And Hector is coming closer the whole time. And now the old man would have died, except that Diomedes of the good war cry sees him. And right away he sharply yells out to Odysseus, "Odysseus, son of Laertes, you with all of your resources, where are you running to? Showing your back like a coward. I hope that a spear doesn't find its way into your back as you run like that. Come on, come with me. I think that we can save the old man from this savage." That's what he said. But Odysseus, who had borne many things, he just kept running. He didn't hear him, and he went for the hollow ships, so it was Diomedes alone. Diomedes, who now brought his horses up next to Nestor, and he addressed him, and his words flew. "Old man, you are so worn out. These young spear fighters are too much for you. Your strength is weak, your sidekicks are weak, your horses are heavy. Come on, come up onto my chariot, And then I can show you how these Trojan horses really know how to navigate the plain. They know how to go here or there, whether they're chasing or whether they're running away. Because these are the horses that I stole from Aeneas. That's right, the master of fear. So come on, leave your horses with these sidekicks over here, and we'll drive these horses straight against the horse-breaking Trojans. And then Hector will learn how my spear rages from my hand. That's what he said. And Nestor did not disobey him, but right away he gave his horses to be taken care of by the sidekicks. Strong Sthenelus, Eurymedon, who loved manliness. And then Nestor, he got up into the chariot. And he took the reins, and he whipped the horses. And now it was Diomedes who was aiming at Hector, trying to hit him. But he missed. Instead, he hit Hector's good sidekick charioteer. He hit him, it was Aeneas. Aeneas, who was Thebias' son, hardy Thebias. He hit him in the chest, right next to the breast, so that he fell out of the chariot. And all of the battle fury and life left Aeneas as the swift-footed horses reared back. And a terrible grief came over Hector. But as much as he was sad about his buddy, he went right away to find another bold charioteer. And he found one. If it is his son, Archiptolemus. And right away, Archiptolemus came, and Hector gave him the reins. But even so, now the Trojans, they would have been under horror, under things that you can't even do anything about. Then the Trojans would have been shut in against Ilion like sheep, except that Zeus, the father of men and of gods, he sharply observed him, and he struck down a lightning bolt right in front of Diomedes' chariot. And there was a flame of sulfur that went up. And the horses were terrified underneath the chariot. And the reins, the shining reins, they flew out of Nestor's hands. And fear took over the old man, too. So now he turned to Diomedes. Son of Tydeus, the horses are scared. Don't you know now that this courage of yours is no longer from Zeus? Now Zeus has given the glory to another man. He has given it to Hector. Zeus will give it to us again, if he wants to. But when it comes to the mind of Zeus, no man can fight it, not even a strong man, because Zeus's mind is far stronger. That's what he said. And Diomedes of the great war cry answered him, said, old man, you're right, but there's a great grief that comes over my heart when I think about Hector going and telling the Trojans that I ran away back towards the hollow ships. That's what he's going to say, and then I hope the earth swallows me. That's what he said. And the old man, Nestor, the Granian horseman, said, oh, moi, son of Tydeus, what a thing to say. Don't you know that even if Hector called you a coward, said you had no courage at all, the Trojans wouldn't believe him, neither would the Dardanian allies. The Trojan wives certainly wouldn't, those whose husbands you have thrown down in the dust while they were still in full bloom. That's what Nestor said, and he steered the chariot back into retreat. But Hector and the Trojans, they were just bombarding them the whole time as they went, groaning with arrows and with spears. And it was Hector, big Hector with his shiny helmet. He yelled after them, "Son of Tydeus!" Yeah, the fast-footed Danaans, they used to always give you the good honors. They gave you the best seat, gave you the best pieces of meat, kept your wine glass full. But now they will dishonor you because you are like a woman. So just get out of here, you cheap trinket. There are seats along the bar if you wish to come in. You cheap trinket. I'm not going to give way. I'm not going to let you overcome my city walls. I'm not going to let you lead away my women. First, I will give you your divine destiny. That's what he said. And now Diomedes, he was divided in his heart, right? Because he wants to turn around and fight. 3 times he's turning it over in his heart and in his mind. But 3 times Zeus sends down a sign from Mount Ida, thunder, giving him the notice that the victory is now for the Trojans. And Hector hears that sign too. And Hector calls out, "Hear me now, Trojans, Dardanians, Lycian spear fighters. Be men. Remember your furious courage, because now Zeus, the son of Kronos, he has given the victory to me. He has given me great kudos. And all he gives to the Danaans is pain. The fools, they built up these great walls. These walls aren't even worth mentioning. These walls are nothing. They can't hold my battle fury. My horses will leap easily over this dug trench. So come. I'm going to go and make it all the way to their hollow ships, and when I do, I want you to remember to bring fire so I can set them alight. And then I can kill the Achaeans as they panic beneath the smoke." That's what he said. And then he spoke to his horses. Xanthos, Eupodargos, Ithon, shining lampos. All of you, it's now time for you to remember and pay back all of the comfort that Andromache has given you. Andromache, who is the daughter of hardy Eetion, when she gave you the honey-hearted wheat mixed with wine. When Andromache gave you the honey-hearted wheat mixed with wine, because her heart always ordered her to do that. And you know, I did too, and I brag about being Andromache's husband, her man in full bloom. All right, so come on, horses. Now let's go straight and fast, because I think that maybe we can grab Nestor's shield, the shield that's fame goes all the way up to the sky because it's made completely out of gold. Even the crossbars are made out of gold. And Diomedes, he's wearing that intricate breastplate. Well, you know that was made by Hephaestus himself. So if we can just get those 2 things, well, I think that the Achaeans will go home this very night. That's what Hector said. But Hera, the goddess, resented Hector for saying that. She shook in her throne. And all of Olympus shook too. And then she went and spoke to Poseidon. powerful Poseidon. She said, Earth shaker, oh, Papoi, wide strength. Does your heart not have any pity at all for the Danaans as they die? Why? Didn't they always give you many delightful gifts, whether it was in Helike or in Aigai? So now I say that we have to go down there as a helper. Help the Danaans. Save them from this death. We can push the Trojans back, and we can fight off Zeus too, and I think that we will annoy him as he sits up alone on Mount Ida. That's what she said. And the earth shaker, Poseidon, Hera, you've lost your mind. I do not want to fight with Zeus, not even with all the rest of us. Zeus is just much stronger. That's what he said. And so the two of them were talking like this. And now the whole distance, as far away as the ships were, all the way to where the dug trench, that whole space was filled up with horses and with men who were shut in. And it was Hector. Hector now who was like fast Ares, the war god himself. It was Hector that shut them in because Zeus gave him the kudos. And now he would have made all the way back to the ships and set them on fire, except that Hera inspired Agamemnon to go and quickly stir up the Achaeans once again to fight. And so the Lord of Men, Agamemnon, he, with his huge hand, picked up his purple coat and went running through the ships and through the tents, rousing up all the Achaeans. And then he came right to Odysseus' ship. Odysseus' big-bellied black ship. It was right in the middle of the fleet, equidistant from Achilles' ship and Telamonian Ajax's ship. Of course, Ajax and Achilles would draw their ships up on the edges because they trusted the most in the strength of their hands and in their manliness. But now at Odysseus' ship, Agamemnon shouted out, and his shout went piercing through all the Achaeans. Shame! Argives, evil, insults, pretty boys. Where did all those boasts go to, huh? Remember when we were in Lemnos? Everybody was drinking and eating the good meat. Yeah, I remember. Yeah. Some of you said you could take on 100 Trojans, huh? Some of you said you could take on 200. And now what? Now we can't even take on Hector by himself? He's going to set the ships on fire. Zeus, why have you thrown this kind of crazy delusion on the minds of my strong kings? Why have you robbed them of their kudos? Didn't I never once passed by your beautiful altars without burning some thighs or some pieces of meat because I wanted to sack Troy. So now at least grant me this. Let my people, let them escape. Let them run away. I don't want to see the Achaeans beaten down by the Trojans. That's what he said. And Zeus, he actually took pity on Agamemnon because Agamemnon was pouring tears. And so Zeus nodded. He just nodded that the people, the Achaeans, they would be safe and sound, that they would live. And now the Achaeans, they rushed back into battle towards the Trojans, and they remembered their battle lust. It was because Zeus had sent them a sign. Zeus sent them an eagle, which is definitely the best of the birds. And it had in its talons a fawn that's a child of deer. And it swooped down and it dropped the fawn right next to the very beautiful altar of Zeus, where the Achaeans always performed their sacrifices to Zeus, who had many voices. And when the Achaeans saw this, that's when they remembered their battle lust and turned back again. And so first, it was Diomedes of the great war cry. He went rushing with his horses all the way across the trench, and he killed the first of the Trojans who was out there. It was Phramdon's kid, Agelaos. Diomedes got him in the back with the spear so that it came straight out his chest, and he fell forward and fell out of the chariot, and his armor clattered all around him. And after Diomedes, here comes Idomeneus. And Idomeneus' famous sidekick, Meriones, a man like Enyalus, the battle god. And there is the two Ajaxes now with their furious rushing, and Eurypylus, the son of Euaemon, and of course Agamemnon and Menelaus, the two sons of Atreus. And here comes Teucer. Teucer always aiming with his bow. And Teucer's brother, Telamonian Ajax, who has his big shield. So it works like this. So Teucer goes back and forth from Ajax's big shield, and Ajax covers him with his shield. So Teucer will scan, and he'll shoot an arrow out into the crowd, and then he runs right back under Ajax's shield like a little kid runs back to his mom, just like that. And Ajax covers him with his shield. So who was the first man that Teucer killed? Well, first he killed Orsilochus, and then Ormenos, and then Ophelestes, and then Ditor, and then Chromius, and then Lycophontes, like a god. And then Proamon's kid, Amopaon, and then Melanippos. And each one of these, one after another, went down into the earth that feeds many men. And when Agamemnon, powerful Agamemnon, the Lord of men, saw the ranks of the Trojans going down underneath Teucer's bow, well, Agamemnon was delighted. And he came and stood next to Teucer, and he said to him, Teucer, you know, I love you as much as my own head. Son of Telamon, you are like a ray of sunshine now. When you're shooting like this, a ray of sunshine to all the Danaans and to your dad, Telamon, who raised you from the time you were little, in his own house, I think, even though you were a bastard. And now you will send him this fame from afar, shooting like this. And I'm going to say something else, too. And it's going to happen. That if Zeus and Athena grant it that I sack Ilion, well, I'm going to give you the prize of honor. Maybe it'll be a tripod. Maybe 2 horses with a chariot. Maybe it'll be a woman that you can sleep with. That's what he said. And Teucer, the son of Telamon, he answered, Son of Atreus, lordliest Agamemnon, why are you trying to give me an incentive when I'm already kicking ass? I am only going to stop when I can't go on anymore, and I think that we can drive the Trojans back into Troy if I just keep waiting for them and killing them with my arrows. You know I've already hit 8, right? 8. have received my arrows in their skin. But I just can't seem to hit this man who is like a rabid dog now, Hector. And with that, he shot, wanting with his whole heart to hit Hector. But he missed. He hit Gorgythion instead. Gorgythion, who is the strong son of Priam. It was Castanera that was his mom, and Priam had actually married her in Icime. She was such a beautiful girl. She had a body like a goddess. He hit Gorgythion right in the chest, and his head slumped over to one side. It was like a poppy in full bloom in the garden when it's weighed down in the springtime dew and it just slumps over. That's how his head now slumped over to one side, weighed down by his helmet. But Teucer, he wanted to try again. So he put another arrow on the string and he aimed and he missed. Now it was Apollo that fouled his shot. And so instead of Hector, it hit his strong charioteer, Archeptolemus. It hit him in the breast. And he fell out of his chariot, and the horses, they reared up, and Archeptolemus's battle strength and his life dissolved. And a terrible grief came over Hector. But even though he was grieving for his buddy, he went and called out to Cebriones, his brother, asked him to take the reins. And Cebriones, he did not disobey, but quickly he came and took the reins. Oh, God. Oh, yes. And Hector jumped down. He jumped down onto the earth. Why? Well, he picked up a rock. He picked up a rock because he really wanted to hit Teucer, just like Teucer had really wanted to hit him. And so now, as Teucer is stretching out his bow, just like this at Hector, well, that rock hits Teucer, and it hits him right where you want to hit an archer if you're throwing a rock at him. It's in the clavicle, where the neck joins up with the shoulder, so his whole arm went dead, all the way to the wrist, and he fell to his knees, and his bow and arrow fell to the ground. But Telamonian Ajax, he did not neglect his brother. Right away, he came and covered him with his huge shield. And then Teucer's two best buddies, Megistius' kid, Aeneas, and Alastor, they grabbed him and they dragged him out of the battle. He was groaning heavily as he went. And now the battle fury comes back to the Trojans. And it's Hector who's running after them. As the Achaeans flee, Hector, he's like a dog. He's like a dog that's nipping at the heels. He's like a dog trying to bite the ass of a wild boar or of a lion. And the Achaeans keep running, and Hector just keeps killing the last one. And now the Achaeans, they make it all the way through the stakes and the trench, and they get back to their ships, and there they hold, yelling out to one another, raising their hands up to the gods, praying. But Hector just wheels around with his chariot, those chariots with those horses with beautiful coats. Hector, and now he has the eyes of a Gorgon. Now he has the eyes of man-slaughtering Ares, the war god himself. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, as usual. I want to thank Bardapin and Amit. I want to thank Alex Martalogu, who saved my ass a couple times tonight. And I want to thank this week's director, Stefanie Buxton. Please come back again next week. The director is Christina Culiandro, and I want everyone to note that we're not going to have one on April 9th. So I just want to give early notice that that's the only time that we'll have a Monday off until we finish. Thanks so much again. I hope to see you next week.